Now I would like to invite the Honorable Ms. Joephy Chan, Chen Wing-Yan, to share with us her observations. Ms. Chan is a newly elected member of the Legislative Council. Congratulations. She's also a member of the Hong Kong Federation of Trade Unions. But more importantly, she is a very popular social media influencer in Hong Kong, a very active public affairs commentator. Ms. Chan, please.
Thank you again for your excellency. Speaking of the effectiveness of Hong Kong national security law, first of all, I would like to show you the following instruments I had with me when I took to the streets to gather views and support from residents back in 2019. Here, this is a knife-resistant vest to prevent us from being stabbed by radical rioters. And here, this is a fire blanket, just in case we got burned alive during the election campaign. These were the typical black cloud violent acts and threats we're unfairly subjected to as patriotic candidates running for the district council election back in 2019. And we've put up with this for almost 25 years. In 1997, China, our motherland, resumed the exercise of sovereignty over Hong Kong. In the following 404 years, every time we had elections, appallingly, destabilizing forces exploited the loopholes and deficiency in Hong Kong's electoral system to push for their secessionist agenda. To name a few incidents, in 2003, before the local election, massive crowd was mobilized to fill Hong Kong streets to oppose the enactment of legislation on Article 23, which is our constitutional obligation enshrined in the Basic Law. In 2014, a year before the local election, the unlawful occupied central incident came to play. In 2019, again, before the district council election, the local hostile forces colluded with foreign forces from a handful of Western countries and stepped up their efforts to incite color revolutions in Hong Kong. As we can see, these were not coincidental. We had enough, and the 2019 Black Cloud riots was the last straw. The political security and social stability of Hong Kong had been threatened as never before. After the implementation of the national security law and the improvement of the Hong Kong electoral system thereafter, 2 elections took place, the election committee subsector elections and the legislative council elections, both in which I had the honor to take part, so I can share with you an important personal insight. I no longer find these knife-resistant vests and this fire blanket necessary. The successful and peaceful elections of last year marked the transition of Hong Kong from chaos to stability and prosperity. Therefore, the combination of the national security law and the improvement of the electoral system fully reflects the firm determination of our motherland to maintain one country, 2 systems, and to foster the democratic development in Hong Kong. I noticed that several Western countries can't help interfering with our internal affairs, making accusations against our national security law and defaming about our electoral system. And it's just double standards in play. All these Western countries have their own national security laws, and looking around the world, administration by patriots is a common political ethic and a widely recognized practice. Yet some Western countries released reports on Hong Kong and held the so-called Summit for Democracy in an attempt to disrupt the electoral order during the election and to discredit the election results. A few days ago, Hong Kong's last British governor, Chris Patten, wrote in an online article alleging that Hong Kong people's rights and freedom have eroded. To set the record straight, let's look at the history of Hong Kong. Hong Kong of China had been occupied by the British since 1841. During the 150-odd years of British colonialism, all governors were directly appointed by the British Prime Minister or the British Queen. The British had 150 years of time to give us democracy, to allow Hong Kong people to choose the city's leader. But there were neither elections nor democracy at all. Chris Patten himself was at first democratically rejected by the people of Bath in British parliamentary election when he had been the MP for Bath since 1979. Only after losing his seat, Chris Patten was appointed the last governor of Hong Kong. Chris Patten was therefore not endorsed in any democratic process by the British people, let alone the Hong Kong people. Only after the Chinese central government resumed the exercise of its sovereignty, Hong Kong ushered in a new period, a new age for democracy. The Chinese constitution and the basic law established a system of democracy in Hong Kong and conferred the right to appoint the Hong Kong people to choose our own chief executive. At first, our chief executive was elected by 400 permanent Hong Kong residents. Over time, the number of members of the election committee increased to 800 and to 1,200. Now that with the improvement of the Hong Kong electoral system, the size of the election committee is the biggest ever and has grown from 1,200 to 1,500 members. I myself, a young female, is most honored to be one of the election committee members, showing equality in age and gender, and hence balance in participation. I understand that some Western politicians may be tempted to intervene with China's internal affairs with the aim of containing China's economic development, or perhaps to divert their people's attention away from domestic policy failures, such as those relating to fighting COVID. Nonetheless, they should not disregard the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all model for democracy. Even the US and the UK have different electoral systems. In the US, the president is selected through indirect election of electoral college. In the past, Donald Trump and George W. Bush won the electoral college without securing the majority of the popular votes. In the UK, people cannot directly vote for their prime minister. In general, the party with the most MPs forms a government, and the leader of that party becomes prime minister. We respect the electoral system of the UK and the US despite differences, and we respect the principle of non-interference as the basic norms governing international relations. And so I urge the West to do the same out of mutual respect. In essence, contrasting the electoral systems of the US and the UK with that of Hong Kong is actually comparing apples with pears, because Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China, with executive, legislative, and judicial powers devolved from the Chinese central government. It is in fact more appropriate to compare Hong Kong's electoral system with, say, the New York City's. Western media outlets were quick to pick up on the turnout rate of 30.2% for the Legislative Council election held last year, and they splashed it all over their headlines, seeing the turnout rate as an Achilles heel-like target in their latest offensive against Hong Kong's revamped electoral system. But in stark contrast, in November last year, New York recorded a lower turnout rate of 24% in its local elections. While Western media hyped up the turnout rate of Hong Kong's local election, calling it a fake election, they took no issue with the much lower turnout rate of the New York City's. The Western media's obsession with attacking Hong Kong's local election and playing up the so-called legitimacy question have backfired. As a political key opinion leader and influencer online, as well as a newly elected Legislative Council, I vow to continue to expose the hypocrisy and double standards of the rest. Whenever I get the chance for a better and brighter future of Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chan. Perhaps I forgot to mention that Joephy is also the youngest member, if I'm not wrong, of the Legislative Council. Thank you again.
睇完呢條片，如果中意嘅話，記得要讚好、留言同埋分享俾身邊嘅朋友，仲要訂閱埋我陳穎欣 Joephy Chan 嘅 YouTube 頻道，撳埋 See First 隔離個啷啷，咁你就唔會錯過我任何一條短片㗎喇。我哋下一條片再見。